started. Do you have the agenda? It usually has one. Okay, good evening. It is 7 o'clock. I'm going to call this meeting to order. Dr. Midzik, has this meeting been posted?
Yes, it has.
Okay, thank you. And roll call will show that all 5 board members are present. We will start with the Pledge of Allegiance, please. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, we've got some visitors tonight. First on our agenda is going to be the Panther Pride from Greendale High School. So, Dr. Midzik, do you want to speak to them?
Yes, I would like to welcome Mr. Lotus, and he's brought a team with him to share a point of pride from the high school.
I'd like to correct that. The team brought me with them. Tonight you're going to hear about the Greendale High School SET team, Student Equity team. And my voice in this will be limited tonight, as you hear from the advisors and also the students that are doing this really important work. SET began in the fall of 2018. At that point, we teamed with equity and inclusion coaches, Dr. Mutri and Dr. Smith. We worked with Menominee Falls High School and learned what their group was doing, and really trying to search for what is our place within the Greendale High School student groups and also in the district's equity work. I believe that it wasn't really until Ms. Olson and Ms. Bernal started to lead this outstanding group of students that we really started to hit our stride. And tonight you're going to hear about all the value that they bring to Greendale High School and also the district. So enjoy the presentation. Be sure to ask a lot of questions because they are ready. Ms. Bernal.
Thank you, Mr. Lotus. Whoops, I'm a little bit short here. So my name is Marisa Bernal. I am a Spanish teacher here at the high school. I have been here since my son was a year old, and I used to bring his sippy cup with milk to school because it would be a long ride home if I didn't have that sippy cup. So I was asked to introduce myself and answer the question of why did I choose to be part of Student Equity Team. And that is a very profound question that brings forth a lot of emotions. Emotions of sadness, emotions of being invisible, and feelings of not belonging. So when someone asks me this question, it takes hours of thinking to answer this and years of suffering. It is a question that I can definitely not answer fully in the few minutes that I have tonight. But I am willing to share a piece of my narrative. As an immigrant who came to the United States as a 3-year-old child, I grew up in Hartford, Wisconsin, which is a majority a white Caucasian town. The only people of color were the Mexican and Latino families that lived due to the need for workers. We lived in a low-income government housing where many of the families were farm workers and factory workers. I grew up being one of few students of color in a majority white school. Many times, I was the only student of color in my entire class, not just English class, graduating class. I never felt like I belonged. And we definitely didn't have a student equity team. I experienced many hateful words, many hateful events that were directed towards me. And being young, I did not understand. What could possibly be wrong with me? I knew a few years ago that Steve was working with a group of selected students. I knew that it was a step forward in the progress here in my Greendale community. But I was not sure what was going on in these meetings. Then a couple of years ago, Maggie came in. And I remember her talking about the student equity team and if there was this link that anyone could join, and the link was out there for anyone to join. And so I contacted her, very interested and excited, and said, Maggie, I want to join. She's like, that link is for students. And I was like, okay, that's great, you know. There's going to be this student equity team for my students. And then a few months later, Maggie contacted me and said, I remember your email. I remember you wanted to join us. And I said, yes. She's like, are you still interested? I said, yes. And she stated that I could join one of their virtual meetings because this was during COVID times. And I saw these students. I observed, I watched, I listened. And I felt like I belonged. So why did I choose to be a part of student equity team? There are several reasons. But the most important reason I am here is because of my students. These students are the reason why I am here today before you. I look at my students of color and I see myself. I understand them. I can connect with them. And I know they can connect with me. But I'm not just here for my students of color. I'm here for all of my students. I'm here to make an impact. I am here because of humanity. Because when I see my students, I see human beings who want to belong. We all deserve to belong. They are worthy. I value them. I am here because of love. I do all of this because of passion. My passion to educate as much as I can and to touch the lives of human beings. I'm here because my students are me. Thank you. I'm now going to bring one of my precious students, Anna Marie.
So, as you know, this is Student Equity. I'm Anna Marie Murphy. I've been in SET for 2 years now. Currently this year we have 33 members. We typically do 2 monthly meetings, and our agenda within those meetings consists of team building activities, which creates more of a comfortable environment for everyone to connect. And when it comes to months where we recognize people of color, we break into little groups which contain tasks such as putting up informal posters, having music play within the halls, and announcements. Each meeting not only brings us closer together, but it helps grow our minds and learn how to handle certain situations. Could someone flip the next slide? Okay, our mission, Student Equity Team will represent, educate, include, unite, and celebrate all student voices. Our vision, belonging.
Hi, I'm Max Strait. This is my 3rd year of Student Equity Team. So this is just a little outline of what we're about to dive into in this presentation. The 4 main things we do with Student Equity Team is we inform the community, organize interactive events, reshape district policy, and create a network of equity. Slide. So as far as informing the community goes, we do announcements. We do the announcements over the loudspeaker, and then also our weekly announcements that goes out to the whole school over email. We add on to those announcements. We also announce things through social media. We have an Instagram. And then equity updates is on our website. We update our website. So there's plenty of ways to learn about what we're doing in the student equity team. We also do videos. Usually we do about one video a month, and then we show it during our school's advisory meetings. These videos are a lot of times Heritage Month videos when there's a Heritage Month going on. So the video we're about to show is for Indigenous Heritage Month. But we also do some informative videos. A very good example of that was earlier this year for one of our Spirit Days. We were doing, it was like music, favorite music genre, and we could see maybe some cultural appropriation potentially happening with that. So we decided to be proactive, and we made a video and sent it out to the whole school, kind of letting people know what cultural appropriation is and how you can kind of make sure everybody feels like they belong. So anyways, here's our Native American Heritage Month video.
It's the month of November, which means it's Indigenous Heritage Month, so we're honoring the rich culture of Native American people and Native Alaskan people. The month of November was chosen because it's the end of harvest season, and it's also a time to educate about the historical trauma of Indigenous people. Our first member is John Harrington. He's a member of the Chickasaw Nation, and he's the first Native American to fly into space.
You look over the edge of the Earth, and you realize how thin our atmosphere really is. Our planet is fragile, and I saw that defending nature had to be my life's work.
Wendy Red Star is part of the Crow Nation. She's a famous artist who challenges how society sees Indigenous people.
I'm sure the audience, just the way that we've sort of been set up, immediately as we walk through the door, assumes that these people no longer exist. And there were dioramas, they look like Montana, and I was like, I need to take this back and make this piece that articulates my...
I think it got cut off short, but it's all right. You got the gist.
Yeah.
Thank you to Eli. He's one of our members. He put the video together. We just took one of our advisory days to go out, and we filmed all of it as one of our little tasks that we set out for that month.
Hi, I'm Jack. This is my second year being in Student Equity Team. One of the main things we do here at Student Equity Team is we organize interactive events for the community and the school district. The first one in the top left there is the MLK Service Day. That's the most recent one we've done. There we packaged and collected diapers along with feminine products, and we had a large amount of students volunteer as well as teachers, not just from the high school, but from elementary schools and the middle school. And then if you go to the top right over there, that is the Hispanic Heritage Month movie night that we held at Canterbury, which is one of the elementary schools. And then we had a great turnout for that event, hundreds of students and their families, just families from our community. In the NPR, we played the movie Coco, and in the gym, we had room for interactive like tables and activities for little kids, as well as we had Hispanic locally owned businesses come in and sell their goods, as well as we had food trucks outside with Hispanic food. And then, so we had a great turnout for that. It was wonderful. And then the one on the bottom is one of the ones we had here at the high school. That was just during a school day, during our ACP. We had someone come in and host a stepping class for Black History Month, and we had a pretty good turnout for that as well during ACP. So yeah, those are just some of the interactive events we've done for Student Equity Team. Go to the next slide. And then this is just a calendar of the months we celebrate. So far this school year, we've done Hispanic Heritage Month in September and October. And then in November, we did Native American Heritage Month. So we do, we hang up posters and stuff around the schools, and we make those videos, which gets presented to the whole school on ACP days for informing them about just the month in general and why we bring those into sight. And then currently, we just got out of December and we're in January, which they're not dedicated to anything, but we're still doing stuff. Like we had the MLK Day, interactive day for the community, and then as well we were being proactive for Black History Month, which is a big one for February. And then as well in March we have Women's History Month, April Autism Acceptance Month, and etc. So yeah, it's a good look for the months that we do during the school year.
Okay, so a big part of what we do in Student Equity Team is to use student insight to reshape district policy. So when we think about racially equitable policy, we think about what we can do to eliminate any structural or institutional barriers that stop students from reaching their potential or achieving certain opportunities. So part of our anti-racism policies have to do with being proactive and preventing instances of racism. We've had some of those here in the past, so we can do what we can to prevent those instead of dealing with them after the fact. That also plays into bullying and harassment. So the school has policies to deal promptly with any reports of bullying or harassment in the school, and hate speech is also part of that. So all of this reshaping of district policies has to do with starting early to make the community a more belonging space for people of color, people of any economic status, making a space for everyone in the school, and making sure that everyone has a chance to reach the great opportunities we have at the school. Next slide, please. And then another one of our goals is to create a network of equity to make sure that everyone has a voice in our vision of belonging. So all voices are heard through staff, family, students, and community. Ways you can reach out to us are through our website. You can just look up Greendale Student Equity. There you can find our equity updates, our quarterly equity updates, our mission and vision, things that we do. Instagram, social media, you can just look up GHS Student Equity. There we post our videos that we showed before and certain events that we have and things relating to the different heritage months. You can reach out to our director, Ms. Olson. I included her email up there. And then another thing is you can just reach out to members. What we do in our meetings is we learn a lot. Reach out to us. We have a lot to say. And then for students, you can join. So thank you.
Hi, my name is Isabella Cartlow, and I joined the Student Equity Team last year as a sophomore looking to be more involved in the student body, and by joining, that is exactly what I got. This quote is from Caroline Belden, who is the writer of The Inclusion Solution, and she said that equality is leaving the door open for anyone who has the means to approach it. Equity is ensuring there's a pathway to that door for those who need it. And by being in Student Equity Team, I feel like I have a direct connection to making sure that everybody that goes to the high school, and we're trying to extend this throughout the district also, but I feel like I have a greater part in ensuring that other people have that pathway, that other people might have an easier way of getting already. Next slide, please. So now I will be joined by the other members to answer any questions that you guys have for us.
Great, thank you so much. Let's give them a hand first of all. Thank you. Appreciate all of you taking your time tonight to come and share with us. From the board, I would like to see if anyone has any questions or comments or anything that you'd like to share.
I always have a question. So I was wondering where you meet and how often.
So We usually have 2 monthly meetings, and those definitely range. Sometimes we'll have them during in school. Like, for example, in the beginning of the year, we have a full day retreat planning our year, basically, for what's coming up. And then sometimes we'll meet in the room behind you, or we'll meet in Miss Bernal's room. So, yeah.
Has anyone approached Mr. Lotus about getting some social studies credit for this work?
Anybody else?
Well, how are you able to attract new members? Because you'll have several of you graduating this year, so you'll have holes to fill.
Yeah, we definitely have realized that there are a lot more seniors in the student equity team in the past years. So last year, at the end of the school year, we, at the beginning of the day, during the middle school's literacy block, me and a few other students went and presented to different home bases in the 8th grade to it was the same kind of slideshow here, kind of presenting what we do and our goals, and then trying to encourage students to join. And we got a few members from that, but recently we've been trying to reach out to more freshmen and underclassmen to continue this program. And also, another big thing is we talked about Eli with the videos before, and we're trying to get another kind of prodigy to make these videos and extend our message. So.
And that young lady is Sofia Tabao.
I was wondering about the videos as well. How often are they shared, and how are they shared?
It depends, honestly, on what's going on within our school. Like, for example, we mainly do them when it comes to those months where we recognize people of color, but then we did have one during homecoming week when we were nervous about cultural appropriation. So they really do vary, but you will get them during November and February. Those are really when we produce those videos.
And are they into homerooms, or?
We do them during ACP, so yeah, technically homerooms.
And then are they posted somewhere else for other people, or do you just release them month by month?
So yeah, we show them to everybody in the school through advisory, and then also we post them on our Instagram, so you can actually see them before advisory through our Instagram. And it's usually on average once a month, I would say.
Yes, and it is also on the Greendale YouTube page as well. And they are shown K-12. They show them during the elementaries because it's great learning for them around people celebrating Indigenous or Native American. No one knew that there was a Bucks player, and there is. And so being able to share that with all of our kids, K-12, is really important. So we do share that with all the principals, and they share that in their morning message.
Another thing I talked about earlier is the quarterly equity updates. You can find videos on there. It's just a great resource for what we do here. There's pictures, videos, and just an explanation of what we do. So.
I just have one more question, and since there's some experts, some Latino, Hispanic experts in the room, why is Indigenous experts in the room, why is Native American Month, Hispanic, celebrated, why does it start September 15th and go October 15th? Why is it not just the month?
In several Latino countries, Independence Day, for example, in Mexico, Independence Day is September 16th. So they created the month of Hispanic Heritage Month to commemorate those Independence Days that run through September through October.
Thank you.
I just want to thank you guys. I think it's important. And I think the thing that I took away from what you shared was that you're trying to create an environment. You're trying to create, an environment in our school that people feel as if they belong, and students are gonna excel if they have that belonging. And I think that's one of the things that we've done as a district is we try to make sure that students find a pathway, whether it's athletics or band or music or theater. Or any types of clubs that they want to gravitate to. So I think what you do just complements that and is important in making sure that students belong and we'll just be a more successful school when that happens. So thank you for your time.
And if I could just add, first of all, it's really important to hear the stories of other people. That's how we learn. And each of you taking the time to not only share your stories, but to learn from each other is an asset to our school district. I know you mentioned before that we have policy in the district. You probably are aware we have an equity policy. And at any point, if there's things that you feel that we should be revisiting in that policy, we would like to hear from you. The student voice, as Wes and Kaya both know, is very important to the work we do on the school board. And your voice is very important to that. So I just want to thank you. I don't know if Rob, did you have anything else you wanted to say? No, or you're going to say it all, right? So anyways, the work you're doing is very critical. As board member Crepito just said, it helps you in the academic sense to be able to work in school. Means that your whole self needs to be included in that. So I just want to thank you. And is it Ms. Burnell? Thank you for sharing your story. That was very meaningful.
You're welcome.
So thank you. Let's give them another round of applause. Thank you, guys. And you're always welcome to stay for the meeting, but I have a feeling you have homework. Thank you for being here tonight. All right, next on our agenda, and thank you, Mr. Lotus, as well. Next on our agenda is the communications from Dr. Midzik. Do you have any communications tonight?
Yes, I do. Greendale Schools staff honored the legacy of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. with celebration and service. On January 12th, district team members helped out by sorting food donations at the Hunger Task Force, and the entire Greendale School District staff gathered on Martin Luther King Day for learning and service, with all educators gathering for professional development in the morning. The community was involved by donating diapers and dollars for Milwaukee Diaper Mission. Greendale Schools sorted and organized the donations for delivery to the Milwaukee Diaper Mission. More than $1,000 was raised, and 6 rolling carts full of diapers and period products were received. Many thanks to our community for supporting this project. The Special Education Advisory Team, SEAT, is hosting a winter sensory-friendly family event for all students and families in our community this Saturday, January 28th, from 10 a.m. to 11:30 a.m. at Highland View. There will be activities for all learners and learning styles, including a creativity station, a quiet station, a music station, and a movement station. We hope to see you there. In partnership with the Community Alliance and the Greendale Health Department, Joe Beckman, a well-known motivational author and speaker, is coming to our area. On Tuesday, February 7th, Greendale Middle School and Greendale High School students will participate in an assembly at the high school auditorium. Joe Beckman's presentation is designed to inspire confidence and provide practical ideas for improving communication and building relationships. That evening, the community is invited to attend the 4th annual Family Wellness event, where Mr. Beckman will make a family-friendly presentation for the whole community. The wellness fair begins at 5:30, and 8th grade health posters, presentations, and community wellness vendors in the high school cafeteria. Mr. Beckman's presentation begins at 6:30 in the high school auditorium. This event is free and open to the public. Members of the Board of Education and District Administration participated in the Wisconsin State Convention last week at the Wisconsin Center. Board members will share information on their learning at the first board meeting in February, and Mr. Mitchell, accompanied by Mr. Coombs, gave a presentation at the convention that I'm sure we'll talk about when we discuss our learning next meeting. The elementary music program received a Let the Music Play grant from Summerfest and American Family Insurance to purchase ukuleles. 5th grade students have been learning how to play them. All are having a lot of fun with this new musical opportunity. And an in-kind donation of $2,000 worth of cardboard was received from Independence Corrugated, LLC, to support the high school physics students who competed in the 2023 Cardboard Boat Regatta. And maybe Kaya might touch on that when she shares her student update. Thank you to Independence Corrugated.
Thank you, Dr. Midzik. And speaking of student voice, we have our student reps tonight. And any current events you'd like to share or updates?
Well, touching on what Dr. Midzik already shared, the boat regatta was a huge success, especially for the juniors in the high school right now. We got to incorporate fun and also physics learning because you had to figure out if you were going to sink or float, and we definitely could tell who did their homework and who did not. But either all, it was just fun to everyone participate, and everyone showed really a community sense, and everyone is helping each other out, cheering for each other, even the ones who didn't make past one row. It was a really good event for everyone to go to.
Did that take place in the pool area?
Yes,
then?
it did.
Okay.
We got to do 4 boats per race, and there was a lot of heats. I think there was 63 different teams.
Wow.
Yeah, it was a very one of the largest ones they've had because physics used to be optional before, and then now since they're a required class, obviously you're going to have more teams. And then also a record was made. The first heat, I think in 20 years, which I got to take part in, was the first one in 20 years to everyone make it to and from and then complete the race. Otherwise, before everyone sank before or something like that. And then also touching on what Dr. Midzik shared and what we learned from the Student Equity Team's presentation, we had a very successful Martin Luther King Jr. Day. We got to collaborate with teachers and students students got to see some of their old teachers and everything and create more of a bonding, and we just all worked together to stay focused on our mission, which was collecting and then repackaging to give out to the community feminine products and diapers. It was a really great opportunity for everyone to be part of, and also just a really good thing that Greendale provided for its teachers and students to all participate in.
And then adding on to what Kaya said, with the boat regatta, I didn't participate in it, but I actually lifeguarded for it. And just watching all of it happen was pretty fun. And then another big thing is that the first semester ended officially last week. We finished all of our exams. And then tomorrow, actually, the new semester begins. And just being a senior, it's a little bittersweet, but I'm excited for it to happen.
Awesome. Well, thank you both for your updates tonight. Next, we're going to move on to the citizen comments, and I will just read to you for a moment. Welcome to all of those who will be speaking this evening. We would like to remind you that the board meetings are for the purpose of carrying on the business of the district. They are official business meetings held in public. Through Board Policy 186, the board allows citizens to make comments by scheduling 2 opportunities on the agenda to receive citizen comments. In accordance with the intent of the Open Meetings Law, please be aware that although the Board of Education welcomes comments from the public, it cannot discuss or debate items brought up during public comments. In order to hear from all citizens who wish to speak and to ensure that the official business of the district is addressed, board policy sets a time limit for citizen comments. We will be adhering to that board policy and its time limits at tonight's meeting. Persons wishing to address the board are asked to come to the microphone and state their name and address for the record. Comments are limited to only 1 time. Individuals who will be speaking will be limited to 3 minutes. Citizens are limited to a period not to exceed, citizen comments are limited to a period not to exceed 30 minutes. So is there anyone that would like to speak tonight?
Hi, I'm Elise Siskey, 5679 Oriole Court. I'd first like to officially say, if y'all don't know, I'm running for school board. I'm first on the ballot, and I have signs in my trunk if anyone's interested. Just kidding, I don't. But I do have a safety concern. I brought it up at the village board meeting last week, and it's regarding the bus stop in our section. I live in the O section, obviously, and Oakwood Lane, Oakwood Avenue, Oriole Lane, Oriole Avenue, and Oriole Court. The bus stop is on Riverdale and College. So basically, and it's at 7:16 for the middle school. I'm not sure what the high school time is. And like, for example, sunrise today was at 7:14. So, I mean, it's dark a part of the year. And they have to cross 60th and College. There is a stop sign with like the little blinky light above it, but I don't know if you guys drive over there at all, but it like few people stop. It's like a very generous yield, if that. So I'm legit concerned that somebody at some point is going to get hit by a car in the dark crossing the street to get to the bus in the morning. So I just wanted to bring that to everyone's attention. So thank you.
Thank you for sharing. Anybody else like to speak tonight? Okay, seeing no more, we are going to move on with our agenda. Tonight we'll start with action item 1, which is the approval of the regular meeting minutes from January 9th.
I move approval of the January 9th, 2023 regular board meeting minutes as outlined in agenda item 1.
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second to approve the board meeting minutes from January 9th. Any further discussion? And if not, we'll take a roll call.
Yes. Yes.
Yes.
Yes.
And I'm yes, motion carries. Next on our agenda are the financial reports. We received the monthly financials, the revenue and expenditure reports, and we are set to approve checks and disbursements. So I don't know if there's anything for Mr. Mitchell tonight.
Sure, just real briefly, revenues through the month of December, 5.77%. That compares with 22.45 in the prior year. Expenditures, 36.05%. That compared with 32.76%. The month of January, we'll see property tax payments for the first time. So you're seeing the revenue numbers coming in line as we get to some of our higher revenue months during the school year. As far as the checks for this evening, we had the summary posted, but I sent an email to the board late with the detailed check information. So if there's board members that would like to discuss that after the meeting, when you have a time to fully review, please reach out to me.
Okay. All right. So we have the checks and disbursements. Were there any questions about anything this week? I did just see the one item for $165,000. I don't know if you can speak to that. And I wasn't certain because normally if it's $150,000 or more, we have to. Well, we are approving it, I guess. So I just was wondering what that item was.
Which item are you referring to?
I don't have it pulled up. I apologize. My computer wasn't logging in.
Maybe Treasurer Hughes can look into it and get back to us.
It might be a range of. It might be a range of checks.
I think that's what it.
So if you look at the checks and disbursements,
I think that's what I was looking at. Yeah.
If there are particular payments that you're reviewing later on and want to discuss those further, happy to do that separately.
I asked quite a few questions.
Okay. Okay.
Jonathan's used to my questions.
All right. Any other questions tonight? Seeing none, I'm looking for a motion to approve.
I move to approve general disbursements in the amount of $656,479.72 and payroll in the amount of $3,226,369.32 for a total disbursement of $3,882,849.04 as outlined in agenda item 2.
I second the motion.
Okay, so we have a motion and a second to approve checks and disbursements. Any further discussion? Then we will take a roll call.
Yes.
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 Yes. And I'm yes. Motion carries. We have no unfinished business. Tonight we have some action items, starting with the personnel. We received 4.1A, which is the approval of the 2022-23 GEA agreement, and B, which is the approval of the administration renewals, which we received. So are there any questions about these items? Okay. Seeing none, I'll look for a motion to approve.
I move approval of action item 4.1, the GEA agreement for 22-23 and the administrative renewals.
I second the motion.
Okay, so we have a motion and a second to approve personnel 4.1A and B. Any further discussion? If not, we'll take a roll call.
Yes.
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 And I'm yes. Motion carries. Next on our agenda is the approval of open enrollment, and we received a report from Julie Grotefors. I don't know if you have anything to add tonight, Julie?
No, nothing new to add from the last meeting.
Okay, and we saw that as you know at the last meeting. Were there any further questions from the board about anything on that report?
This was discussed at the last board meeting, and once approved, it will be posted to the website in accordance with the timelines required by state law. And having those posted encourages additional applications to come in when seats are available. Families from other communities that are seeking enrollment are more likely to apply.
What are the dates of those applications? So when can they start applying, and when do they have to?
Can you confirm? It's usually the first Monday in February and closes the last Friday in April, but I'm going to have Julie pull up the date certain.
February 6th through April 28th at 4 p.m.
Is it possible to get an update maybe at our second board meeting in April, just to where we are? I mean, it might be before that last deadline, but we'll get an update as to where we are with the number of applications and the number of offerings. When do we start officially offering?
We are not allowed to offer the seat until after the first Monday in June, and we'll get a certain date on that. And I see Mr. Mitchell taking notes. He'll bring that to you with the updates.
Well, thank you.
Okay. Any other questions?
I don't know, a question. I just wanted to highlight the fact that even with open enrollment, and sometimes because of open enrollment, our class sizes are still fairly low. At the 4K, 5K level, they're 18 to 22. First through third grade, 20 to 24. Fourth and fifth grade classrooms are 23 to 28 students. And then 6 through 12, 25 to 30. So that's always the goal, is to keep the class sizes at a certain cap for ultimate. Oh, go ahead.
When seats are offered, we fill to the bottom number. So if seats are available, it means the class size will be at that bottom number.
Oh, that's even lower.
And that's
then.
important.
Yeah.
That is, I'm glad you pointed that out, Dr. Midzik. We're not trying to go to those maximum numbers, but the seats are to those lower numbers. Anything else?
But, well, then in what case would the number go over 18 then? You mean just with residents that come in at the last minute?
If you see 0 seats added, it means that we are already over that bottom number, and so there's no space available for non-residents.
Okay, I'm just looking at the chart here under class size targets. So in terms of class sizes, is that accurate?
The chart at the bottom that gives you the number of seats, the last chart on the second page, what you see is the class size minimum listed. You see the number of sections that we anticipate, the capacity, and the projected enrollment. If that projected enrollment is under capacity, then seats are offered. And that capacity is the minimum number, not the maximum number.
Sure. No, I didn't mean to be so confusing. Could we just in general, is a little bit above that where it says class size targets? And it says our class sizes for 4K are 18 to 22. Is that accurate? Do we have some 4Ks that are up to 22?
Yes.
Okay.
So but we're working on projected numbers, not actual numbers when we make these decisions. So, for example, at third grade, 8 sections times 20 students is 160. We have 163 residents. So there are going to be some classes that are 21 or more. Because they're divided across 3 schools, one school might have 20 and another school might have 23. So it goes up as resident students add, and sometimes we push against the top end of the class size targets with new resident enrollment, and we split a section. Or sometimes we just hit the top end of the targets.
Sure. Thank you for clarifying.
And can you just explain again, I have a little bit understanding of this, but sometimes if there are more than one family member, but there's not a seat for both of them, how do we handle that?
We have policy on how it is handled, but in general, there are 2 ways to get priority, and one is that you're a continuing student, and the second is that you are a sibling of a enrolled student. However, if there are no seats available, so let's say that there are students who apply in the family and there is a 5th grader and a 3rd grader. The 5th grader may get a seat offered, but there is no space available at 3rd grade, and so that 3rd grader would have priority on the waiting list, but would not necessarily get a seat.
Okay. All right. Any other questions about open enrollment? So we are set tonight to approve this. So if no more questions, we'll take a motion.
Yeah, I move approval of open enrollment for the 23-24 school year as outlined in agenda item 4.2.
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second to approve the open enrollment as outlined in item 4.2. Any further discussion? If not, let's take a roll call.
Yes.
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 And I'm yes, motion carries. Item 4.3 is the approval of the 66.03 agreement, which is the Perkins grant. Dr. Midzik, do you have anything to share on that?
This is an annual agreement, and by partnering, we are able to find efficiencies in claiming grant funding.
So any questions about that?
I move approval of action item 4.3, the Perkins grant.
I just want to make sure we didn't have any further discussion. Are there any questions? Okay, so we have a motion.
I second.
We have a motion and a second to approve the 66.03 agreement, which is the Perkins grant. Let's take a roll call, please.
Yes.
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 And my vote is yes. Motion carries. Item 4.4 is the 66.03 agreement for technology director. That is Mr. Jonas, who's sitting in the room tonight, former 5th grade student. Okay, so any questions about that?
I'll just make a comment that I see Trustee Younger in the audience. I think this agreement is a good example of the village and the schools working together. So we actually have our director of IT, shared between the village and the school. So I think it's a good example of the two entities working together.
Absolutely. Thank you. And thank you for being here too, Trustee Ungar. So any other further discussion about that? If not, I'll take a motion.
I move to approve agenda item 4.4, shared services agreement 6603 for the technology director as outlined.
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second to approve the agreement for technology director. Any further discussion? If not, let's take a roll call.
Yes.
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 And I'm yes. Motion carries. Item 4.5 is the approval of the appointment of our medical advisor. We've been looking for this for a while. And Dr. Midzik, would you like to speak? This is a former Greendale graduate.
Yes, Dr. Sarah Yale has agreed to serve as the medical advisor. She is a pediatrician at Children's Hospital of Wisconsin and also a professor at the Medical College of Wisconsin. So we are grateful for her willingness to serve. It is a voluntary position, so a medical doctor willing to volunteer and write orders for the school nurse is a wonderful thing. So we are grateful for her willingness to serve.
And thank you for your work in attaining her. I think this is an excellent step forward for us. Are there any questions about the medical advisor? If not, I will again look for a motion to approve the medical advisor as outlined in agenda item 4.5.
I'll move approval of action item 4.5 as just stated.
I'll second.
All right, who gets it? All right, we have a motion and a second to approve our medical advisor as outlined in item 4.5. Let's take a roll call, please.
Yes.
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 And I'm yes, motion carries. We are now on
I would like to recommend, to honor the time of those who are joining us, that we reorder the agenda to place 5.3 in advance of 5.1.
That sounds good. Can I get a motion to reorder the agenda?
I move approval to reorder the agenda, moving item 5.3, board self-assessment, first, and then 5.1, 5.2, 5.4, and so on.
Second.
So we have a motion and a second to reorder the agenda with 5.3 on down first. Any discussion? If not, we'll take a roll call.
Yes.
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 Yes, so we did reorder the agenda. Are we starting with the board assessment or with WASD service?
The board assessment.
Okay.
5.3. Mr. Jonas, were you able to connect with George Steffes? Okay, thank you. Hello, George. Okay, we're working on getting volume up for George. The value of a board assessment is a reflection on how are we doing and how are we performing the responsibilities of the board. It is only valuable when we're really honest with ourselves about how we're performing, and I believe that the board did a nice job in responding honestly. They didn't just check through all the same rating. You truly read, and there is divergence among how we answered each of the questions, which indicates that people were reflecting on what was happening and where we fall within each of these categories. George Steffen is a representative from the Wisconsin Association of School Boards, and he is joining us tonight to help us process and reflect on the collective responses to that survey. So welcome, George.
Welcome, George, and thank you for joining us again this year. Can you hear us?
Thank you. It was just 1 year ago that I was there in the library meeting with your board last January 24th, and we kind of looked at the same thing at the board's self-evaluation survey, and I'm glad to be able to join you again, this time virtually.
Excuse me, Mr. Jonas, could you possibly put the volume up?
We have a number of things to go over, and I believe we have about 30 minutes. Is that right?
That's correct.
Okay, all right. Do we have all 5 board members there?
Yes, we do.
Okay, I'm glad. That's great. I just wanted to, basically, I wanted to start by really commending you for doing the self-evaluation survey. It's something that your board has done just about every year. And so one of the things that I think is great is for board members to use this survey as you are doing, and discuss it and consider it and use it as a tool to improve. I noticed that your vision statement talks about cultivating excellence in every student, and I think the board models that in trying to develop excellence as a board and working together. So again, I commend you on taking the survey and then taking the time to try and analyze it as well. Now, as far as the survey goes, the school perceptions self-evaluation survey, there's 10 parts to it, and we don't really have the time tonight to go through all 10 parts. I do think there's 2 sections that particularly relate to you, the board, and the work that you do. And those 2 sections are board operations and culture, which is really talking about the culture of the board and how you work together. Now, there's 2 ways that I analyze it. I will just tell you. One is, I look at what kind of degree of convergence you have as board members. If there's 5 choices, whether you've fully achieved something, whether you've mostly achieved, partially achieved, not achieved or even started it, and then there's not sure. And so you have those 5 answer choices, and I look to see to the degree of convergence. If you've got answers from board members that are spanning all over those choices, there's not much convergence. And one of the things that I have to look at is there truly a divergent here opinion among board members, or is it a language thing where some board members interpreted the question differently than others, and had you had the same interpretation, you might have the same answer. So there's possible to have convergence and divergence for different reasons. Then the other thing that I'm looking at, excuse me, since last year I was there, I have last year's survey results, and I think it's interesting to compare your results this year and last year. So I would like to do that, and I think I believe you've been given some handouts as well. I think Sue Patterson told me, I think that you were going to receive some things tonight. Is that correct?
Yes, she did that. Thank you, Sue.
Okay. Yes, thank you.
Dr. Steffen, we are looking, what we have are the individual lengthy results, so we don't have the orange, purple, green that we had talked about. We just have the blue bars with them listed.
Okay, so you're looking at like the number of board members that ranked each thing for each question.
Correct. So we have a packet. We do have the red, the purple, green, orange, but in order to see the questions, we have a packet for each category. So if you can refer to which category we're looking at, they'll be able to pull up the questions.
Sure. Okay. Well, let's start with board operations. And in board operations, we have a series of questions identical from 2 years ago to this year. That's one of the nice things we can compare from year to year because we have the same questions. And I don't think we need to start talking about the first one, which is we conduct an annual board self-evaluation. You know, everybody knows that you do. You know, you have unanimous, yes, you do. So let's move on. And by the way, I'm glad that you do this. But let's move on. And the next one is we have an effective orientation program for new board members. And you have actually both years, both last year and this year, you have a variety of choices. You know, this year, a number of board members felt, three felt that you do have an effective orientation program. One mostly achieved and two partially achieved. So there's a little bit of difference of opinion, I guess, about how effective the board orientation process was, and maybe if that's something that needs to be improved. I'm not sure. Now, do I understand you have two new board members who just went through this?
That's correct.
Okay. So, well, let me ask if that's something you want to look at, or you feel like that's a process that is fine the way it is.
I personally think it would be nice to hear from our two board members, just because any areas that we can improve on onboarding, I think, is very important. That's something we do every year virtually. So would either of you mind speaking to how your onboarding practice, or how that went for you? Sure. Thank you. Maybe just introduce yourself to George as well, so he knows who you are.
Phone keeps going. Oh, there we go. I'm Tasha Hughes. So I felt, as far as the onboarding process, like the administration, like with Dr. Midzik and with Jonathan and Maggie, that was helpful. And I mean, I have been involved in the district for a long time in different aspects, and I have 3 kids in the district. So a lot of what they spoke about, I kind of had an idea and I understood, and I was on like the budget committee for several years. So while it was at a high level and fast paced, it was okay for me. I'm not sure for the other new board member, but it was more of, I guess, having some sort of mentor, I guess, from one of the other like seasoned board members. I know that there's like an annual meeting, and nobody had reached out to explain the whole process to me, and so I just kind of showed up, and I'm used to winging it. I'm an auditor. I've audited. I would get thrown in new companies every week, but one of the board members said, "Well, we always learn, trial by fire," or however it was said, and I'm like, well, I'm really good at learning on the fly, but it's not necessarily something that needs to happen. If it happened to you in a prior year, that doesn't make it okay to happen for another board member. And there's just certain things that we don't know about. We showed up for the graduation ceremony, and the board members that had been here for several years had like their stoles because they had received master's degrees. That wasn't communicated to the newbies, and actually I'm not sure how to order that myself for this upcoming graduation ceremony, so that would be something nice to have. I mean, there are several examples like that, so I'm not sure. I've kind of made a list, and I may share that list with the board president.
That'd be great. Thank you, and thank you for sharing.
Yeah. Rob, do you have anything?
Sure. Rob Kobleska. I thought everything with the admin staff went well before our first meeting. But it's kind of, I compared it to there's a race going on and you're kind of just dropped in the middle of the race and you got to kind of keep up with everyone else. So I guess you really don't know what to expect until you're like actually at the table. So I don't think you can really prepare for that. Everyone's a little different. I think that's where I struggled. I guess mainly just board etiquette and kind of how to keep things going. I've learned in the 9 months I've been up here. Again, everyone's different. I'm more I learn better by doing. So at the end of the day, everyone's going to learn differently. But I would say that we do have an effective orientation process. I think it can be tweaked with Tasha and my input as we move forward.
That's great.
I don't know if anyone else, I know Joe, you're pretty seasoned. You might not remember your first board meeting, but I don't know if anyone else has any opinions. Again, it's just you don't know what you don't know until you're up here. So.
And I will follow on that and just say that I agree. It's not been that long ago that I joined the board, but you're right. There are some of those things that maybe seem little, but they're not little. So I think that's really good feedback that you guys are able to share that with us, and that should be incorporated into our onboarding. Getting on a board is not like it seems from the outside, as both of you have figured out. There's a lot of nuances and things to learn once you get on the board. So, but knowing that there are some things that we need to focus on, I think is really good.
Yeah, I think what I heard is that mentoring, to maybe formalize that a little bit, and being able to tap into people who have different experiences. So how would you handle this, or is there something I should be aware of coming up the next 3 months, or something like that?
To piggyback on that, all the information shared is good information. Like if you each have 3 different things to say to prepare us for something, it might be overwhelming, or again, we might get up here and get experience and say, I don't want to do it the way all 3 of you do it. I prefer my own way. So it's good, but too much information might kind of cloud your mind at the same time too.
Don't make it so prescriptive.
There's not a manual that you can give someone or something like this. It's not like sitting at your company's board meeting where it's not in front of a crowd. It's just different.
So maybe just what the expectation is. Here's what's coming up. Here's what you're going to observe,
right? As
opposed to telling you how to do things.
Right.
I think
failing too. Like nobody wants to fail up here or say something incorrect. So I don't know. To me, it's like I don't know what to say at this point, so I don't really want to say anything because I don't know if it's the right thing to say. So. Again, it's just experience.
Right.
Yeah. Well, I think you have to remember, too, that after campaigning is exhausting, right? So you get to the end of your campaign, and then all of a sudden you're at the table, and there's a lot going on at the table that you don't know until you're at the table. So
right.
Yeah. Well, and we had 2 new board members, so it was kind of, I guess, a lot, right, for this election run. So maybe in the future it'd be helpful just to assign a mentor to, one of you would be for us, one of you would be for Rob. I mean, and just have that actual assignment out there so we know who to go to.
Thank you for being specific in examples, because there are mentors through WASB, but some of the examples you highlighted are just local, how we do things, and so the local mentor is important there.
Thank you.
Well, thank you. The term that we use now is called onboarding, and we just had a workshop on that in Milwaukee at the convention. One of the things I wanted to ask you about was your board norm. How should I address board members? Use last names, first names? I want to follow your board norm.
Are you guys all okay with first names? Is that
titles?
Okay. All right. Good. I will follow your norm. I wanted to thank you both, Tasha and Rob, for volunteering. Rob said something I thought was they both said some really important things. One thing Rob said was, sometimes you don't know what you don't know. And I thought that was very, very perceptive, and that's something that onboarding new board members is something that has to be worked on as they are coming on board. But it's a difficult process, and I think you got some ideas tonight. I think of some ways that could be even improved. Let's move on to the next question. Because it's a very important one, and it's one where there has been divergent opinions, and
and last year and this year. And it was a different 5 people who answered last year, but the answers are similar. And the question was, we honor our decisions outside of the board meetings, e.g., not undermining majority decisions with which some disagree. And so in this most recent survey, we've got a couple of board members who think it's fully achieved, and some board members who think it's mostly achieved, and then one who may be partially achieved. So it's kind of it's spread out all over, and that was very, very typical last year as well. It was spread out over 3 different choices. So people are either interpreting this differently, or they have very, very different views about board members speaking out in public. And I wonder if you would like to discuss that a little bit.
Does anybody
Sure.
start with that? You
I
wanna
think
go
it'd be helpful to pair this one with the next question, which is around speaking on behalf of the board only when authorized to do so, because I think they're related. And so if we
Okay,
discuss those
let's take them together, because there's also a lot of disagreement on that one as well.
So anybody want to go first on that one?
Well, I actually, when you were first speaking, I was thinking about how it's more comfortable if everyone's always agreeing at a board table, but it's not necessarily productive or expected, because we were all, you run against, sometimes you end up sitting next to someone you just ran a campaign against, and you come with different perspectives, different experience, different backgrounds. And so I think that most school board meetings I've observed over the years do have a lot of discussion and debate, and frankly, most board meetings in general, there's a lot of discussion and debate, and then just respect. Once the board decision is made, just respect for that decision. Is that what you're speaking to on this question, or?
So, George, my understanding.
Yeah, this is not about having disagreements. I think it's it's healthy to have disagreements about things. It's really about speaking about for the board outside of board meetings, and supporting, once a decision is made, then supporting the decision that the board has made, even though you may have recommended or talked about something different.
And is WASB suggesting that we have to be in full agreement with the decision the board has made?
When I look at the question, and I'm sorry to interrupt, but when I look at the question, there's nowhere in there that says people have to agree with each other.
Right.
Nope.
So that's how I interpreted it and would have answered it. But what I think for me is important is that as a board, we honor that decision, that we don't fall back into, well, that wasn't my decision, or I tried to warn you all about that decision.
That's how I looked at it too, and also, just the idea of after that decision has been made, as you said, honor it, that, not necessarily sending emails that might say, well, this is why I felt this way. I mean, to move forward from that is very important. We're not always going to agree on things, but we do need to have that sense of cohesiveness so that we can make the decisions that are important and move forward. So that's what I was kind of looking at with that one as well.
And I guess to add to that, in my opinion, there are ways to say that you question the decision. I think for me it would be appropriate to say, there was lively discussion at the board meeting, and people were on different sides. But what I think is important is we all listened to each other, and we all came to this decision or this conclusion, and this is how we decided to move forward. So I think there's ways to indicate that there wasn't total agreement without trying to appear divisive. And I never question that, because I don't think that's has never been anyone's intent. But I think from an outsider's perspective, we could come across that way as a board if we don't honor the decision and speak and make sure that if people are going to speak on behalf of the board, that that's typically going to be our board president.
Right, we can't. None of us are supposed to be speaking on behalf of the board, but a 3-2 vote is, speaks divisively. There was a divided vote, so people know there was division on that vote. I don't think you can go out and say, well, we voted 3-2, but we're all in agreement now.
No, and I don't hear that.
But that's the board's decision.
Yeah, I don't hear it that way. What I'm hearing, and I'll just use the most recent pandemic, we did have split votes during that time, but the reality is we made decisions, and those decisions were binding decisions that we went forward as a district and said, this is how we're going to move in this direction at this point. And so to respect those decisions, whether or not you agree with it or not, you have to respect them and work together so that we can get the work of the district done. Is that what you're kind of seeing, George, with that?
Yes, it was. And by the way, although I'm not able to see you, I'm able to hear you. And I just was listening so carefully to what you said, and I heard board members respectfully addressing one another, even when you have different ideas, just now in the last few minutes. So I was very impressed with how you handled that, how you handled this issue and these issues. And I think you're doing that the right way as a board. This is just, I can hear that some of you interpreted it a little bit differently, though. So this may be these divergent views may be partly because you interpreted these questions differently.
George, and if I can add, it's very unusual for people to sit down and have an open discussion about where they might have weaknesses or strengths. And we're obviously doing that in an open meeting. So just the fact that my fellow board members are willing to address some of our concerns, I have a great deal of respect for that and understand that it can be difficult because their eyes on us right now. We're talking about what we can do to improve and even be better.
I'm hearing that there was a divided vote, that when we're out in the community talking about it, we don't necessarily say I agree with the vote, but in this space, what might be said is I respect the decision of the board and move on, and not how I voted or how, the board made a decision and I support the decision of the board.
Yeah. I've also heard some board members say something like, the board has decided or the board has voted on this issue, and at this point, there's not any point in further discussing it further, that type of thing. The board has decided. It just is what you feel comfortable with as far as being an individual board member.
Absolutely. Anybody else? Anything with that?
I don't think Tasha.
Let me also point out one thing, that your answers compared with last year's answers show improvement, tremendous improvement from one year to the next. And so I'll comment. These two questions where you had some divergence are different, but about 90% of these you've shown tremendous improvement as a board. As an example, I would point out the very next question. Our board meetings are effective and efficient, and your responses, this year to the survey, you have, 4 board members who, were saying fully achieved, and you have another board member who's saying no, partially achieved, but getting there. So that's definite. I don't know whether you can see side by side with last year's responses to this very same question, but last year your responses were everybody said, yeah, we agree, only partially achieved, and this year you've got almost full agreement that your board meetings are very efficient and effective. So I don't know what you're doing, but I would say keep it up.
Great.
Does anybody want to divulge what you're doing differently that the board members see in meetings is so much better, so much more effective and efficient?
We're ending before 10 p.m.
I was just going to say one of my goals coming into the role of president was working with Dr. Midzik too, and she really took the lead on scaling back our agendas. Our meetings were going for almost 5 hours. Nobody's good after working all day and going past 9 o'clock. So I think it was really important that we looked at the agendas and we also focused our discussion in these meetings to a point that our meetings have been scaled back very much, but we're still getting the quality and the items that we need taken care of.
Well, and I'll just admit that this one I remember I did put partially achieved for. And my reasoning for that was that sometimes I feel like we're not like necessarily 100, like we don't necessarily stay on track. We kind of veer off a little bit. And sometimes a few of the board members, and maybe I'm guilty of this too, but I mean, we start addressing like the audience or the people that are watching at home. And my understanding of what board members are doing here is that we are supposed to be talking to each other and making decisions. So that was kind of where I came up with the partial.
Right. Well, I know it's hard. It's hard when you have, and you mentioned you had board meetings running 4 and 5 hours. It's hard after you've worked all day to then come to a meeting at night and have a meeting last 4 or 5 hours. It's difficult to focus, to listen, to speak, and so forth, and make good decisions after being in a meeting for 4 or 5 hours. So I think, to the extent that you're not having those meetings, is probably to everyone's benefit, including the board.
And in the interest of efficiency of time, I'm going to kind of clump the next 3 together and just say I'm super happy that board members are understanding open meetings laws, that they're reading the board packets before they come, and they're prepared to have a conversation. Those are spectacular response rates having the board packet and having prepared is every board member is saying that they're doing that, and I believe it to be true based on our conversations at the table.
Yes, I thank you for kind of combining those. I would say, board committees are more effective compared with the response we got last year as far as not being as effective. And then you talk about board members understanding and abiding by the Open Meetings Act. Again, we have better responses this year, so there seems to be better understanding of that. And coming prepared, it seems like that's something that is being done, and that's one of the most important things a board member can do is be prepared. I not only was involved in delivering workshops in Milwaukee, but I also attended them. And one of the workshops I attended had to do with board preparation. And the spokesperson said that it's difficult if you're not prepared to do any higher order thinking. You can only, if you haven't looked at your packet, you can only input data, which is the lowest level of just trying to understand what's happening. It's very difficult then to apply or analyze or whatever something that you just learned. You haven't had time to mull it over. And so preparing for a board meeting is one of the most important things that you can do, and coming prepared. And I'm so pleased to see that, by your own survey, that is happening. That is happening. And that takes work. So should we move on?
Yeah, I think we're ready to go on, unless anyone else has anything.
We're approaching the 30-minute mark, so if we want to just pick one thing from the other category.
Okay, let's go to the culture. Let's go to the culture questions. Our first one is about the board models mutual respect and professional behavior. And this particular one is kind of, we had things going up and going down. Last year we had a fully achieved, one fully achieved, this year none. But we have more people in mostly achieved. and one person moved from partially achieved up to mostly achieved. So you had people moving in and out from a year ago. But that's something that modeling mutual and respectful and professional behavior, you're kind of in flux on that one. I would say you have some improvement and then some falling down a little bit. So it's going both ways on that one. Anybody like care to address that?
Anybody willing to tackle that one? That's a tough.
Sure, I'll take the tough one. No, I actually, full disclosure, I don't even remember filling out this survey. So, so these results, I don't know if they actually reflect my answers, but I think
you didn't answer. Someone answered twice.
Oh,
but I think that you did answer because I think they can only take it once.
I think.
I have no recollection of this. I remember the first time we took it, but I don't remember the second time. But anyway, I think it. You know, they spoke to this when I first came on the board last year. We were at a conference. Dr. Midzik and President Vincent and another board member and I were up at a conference, and a WASB conference, and one of the things they spoke about was just how challenging it is to make a shift from running a campaign oftentimes against the people then you're sitting next to at the board table. So that takes some time. You know, and that certainly does add to the culture and the feeling. And then some people, and just in general, are more comfortable with conflict than others. So when there is discourse on the board or people have different styles of leadership from the board table, I think that affects the feeling that everybody has at the table. So I'll just say that.
Anybody else want to comment on that? I will give a shout out, George, to our two newest board members. Actually have worked very well coming on after a pretty contentious election, and I really appreciate the fact that they put differences aside, and I'm fronting you guys out right here to say that you guys have shown real leadership in that area. Quite frankly, I didn't feel that the two of you were at odds too much in the first place, but the board dynamics really kind of settled down after this last election, and I think it was because we do have a voice of all of our constituents represented on this board now.
Mm-hmm.
Well, and I just wanted to make another comment too. When we're talking about like mutual respect and professional behavior, like I feel like during the meetings it's good, but we also have to remember that there's social media out there. And anything and the comments that we make are pretty public. And so I think we need to be aware of maybe how we respond to certain things and who's able to see what we post.
Mm-hmm. Well, the next question is very similar and related to it, which is about valuing differences of opinion and not letting them degenerate into personality conflicts. And that's something where you've got some mostly achieved and some partially achieved, but maybe there's still a way to go there, or do you think you're getting there?
Joe, are we getting there?
I think the challenge here is, why are we at this table? Are we here to, I think we need to, I always challenge myself to make sure that we're thinking about how do we ensure academic achievement, how do we ensure student success, and when that's the focus of our decision making, I think we're successful. When we bring in or let public discourse or noise from the national level, I think that's where we get waylaid and off kilter. So I think there are times where we can be successful when we keep student achievement at the center of all of our discussions. But if we get off kilter, it's because there are influences or discussions that are going on outside of Greendale, don't relate to what's happening in Greendale, that sometimes the passion or the emotion takes over.
Yeah, they're not saying, the question doesn't say you shouldn't have differences of opinion. It says, in fact, you value differences of opinion, but it's getting into the personality conflicts that is what they're suggesting is to be avoided, if possible.
Yeah, I think the fewer labels that we try to identify or use, the better, because that's when we get into trouble.
But thank you for emphasizing value the differences of opinion.
Right. I know we're running close to the end of our time here, but I just wanted to go back to what I said before. On a number of these things, you're showing very good improvement, and I will skip ahead and just tell you that you've improved on focusing on strategic decisions, which is the level the board is supposed to be at, the strategy level, not focusing on tactics, which is the administrative implementation, the day-to-day management, that you're focusing on the things the board should be focusing on at the strategy level, and you've improved on that. Your culture promotes high expectations. You're almost fully achieved on that, and I'm hearing that there's a high expectations for students, high expectations for staff in Greendale schools, and that's being promoted by the Board of Education as well as the superintendent. And the other thing where your score has improved, really much improved from last year, is you're recognizing students and teachers and schools for outstanding performance. The board is I know that the administration does, but the board is taking part in recognizing. And then the last question is that you believe that the community thinks the board is being effectively governed and makes decisions with the best interest of students in mind. And your scores are all in the top two brackets, fully achieved or mostly achieved. And so and that's much higher rated than it had been a year ago when I came and visited your board there in Greendale. So those things have all gotten better. That's why I'm saying your overall survey, and again, it wasn't the same 5 people taking the survey, I understand, but overall, it seems like your district has really made excellent progress based on the responses that we're receiving from you, from the board members. And so I congratulate you on that. You're improving in so many areas.
Thank you, George.
Yeah, and can I just add one more comment, George? You can probably speak to this as well, that in most parts of Wisconsin, they have trouble finding people to sit on a school board. Whereas here in Greendale, we have healthy elections every year. There's a lot of people that are involved in want to be involved, actively involved at the board table. So that's something to celebrate as well.
Yes, and I think it seems like you have been working on the culture of the board, and that's why I really picked out these 2 areas: culture, of course, and then of course how you work together as a board. And I commend you to continue to take the survey. I think you'll see that your progress tracks well from year to year, and that's the advantage of taking the exact same survey from year to year to year, is you can track the board's progress over a period of time.
Thank you. And the survey is based on research around how school boards can be effective in leading successful school districts. So we appreciate that there is a valid and reliable tool out there to help us focus our work around what makes a difference for student achievement.
Right. Well, as they say in the book, Governance Core, being on a board is a team sport. It's not an individual sport, it's a team sport.
And we want to model for our students what we want to see them do, right? We are doing this all for kids. I think it was mentioned by one of the other board members, but the way we carry ourselves, the way we do our work should hopefully model for our students, what their leadership should look like.
Yes, absolutely. And you are, whether you realized it or not, when you were elected to the board, and I think all of you realize this now, you are, whether you wanted it or not, you're a role model. And so that puts a special burden on each one of you. And the fact is that you only can act legally when you're in session as a board. But you know what? Everybody knows you're a board member when they see you in the community 24 hours a day, 365 days a year. Everyone knows that you're a board member. So you're constantly a role model for people. And that's a real responsibility, and it's a great one that you've taken on, but it's worth it if you're making good decisions for kids.
Absolutely. George, thank you so much for your time Friday and today, getting us through a very important and robust discussion. This is really important work that we constantly reflect on ourselves, just like we ask of our administrators, our teachers, and even our students, right? We need to take that opportunity to see how we're doing. So your time has been very valued here. As a board, we appreciate that.
Well, thank you very much. I wish I could have seen you tonight, and maybe I can come next year and see you then. But I would say continue on with your progress. It looks like you've made outstanding progress thus far, and there's no reason you can't continue to do that.
Thank you, George, and we will see you around town.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Have a good night.
You too. Thank you.
All right. Bye-bye.
All right. We are going to move right on to item 5.4.
One.
Are we going to do Brett?
You reordered the agenda to put 5.3 ahead of 5.1.
Oh, I get you.
Unless you reorder again, we're going with 5.1.
I think out of respect for our other guest, would that be okay? Can I get a motion to reorder again?
I move approval of reordering our agenda so that 5.4 WASB services is discussed next, and then going back to 5.1 and going consecutively after that.
Second.
So we have a motion and a second to reorder the agenda. So 5.4 will come before 5.1. Any discussion? If not, we'll take a roll call.
Yes.
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 And I'm yes. Motion carries. We have a friend of ours right from the neighboring community of Muskego. We've got Brett Hyde, the regional director for Region 11, as well as school board member from Muskego. He is here from WASB tonight to talk to us about the services. So thank you for being with us and for your patience too.
Well, thanks for having me. I appreciate it very much. I'm just curious, is the Bucks game on? Or
yeah.
I know there's the Bucks game.
Another screen.
Yeah. The reason for my being here, or asking to be here tonight, is to get some feedback directly from your board, and I'm reaching out to all the boards in our region. What can we do as an association to help you better? I saw George up there, and you were taking advantage of the board survey from the WASB, which is great. But are we offering all the services that we can, and are there some things that we can improve or even possibly do away with? So with that, I just want to open it up to your board to let me know what they think as far as the services being offered, or provide some criticism, and maybe ask a few questions if they have any.
Sure, and I will defer to my fellow board members. I appreciate you taking this time, and we do utilize a lot of the services, as you probably have seen even here tonight. But any thoughts, maybe from our newer board members, things that you think would have been helpful or could still be helpful to have for services coming from our state association?
And remember, this is your association, or I should say our association.
Ours.
That's why we want to make it successful for all of us.
I'll let you lead off.
Yeah, I mean, are you talking specifically about the WASB convention or services in general from WASB?
All across the board. If you have some comments about the convention, how we could improve it, I'm more than appreciative to hear.
So let me give an example. We did purchase the online platform last year. We still have that. I don't know how well that's been communicated at this point, but we have opportunities for some online workshops and things that you can take just to learn about topics. So say you want to learn about Title IX or something like that. There are opportunities to go on there. We also have used, with our board retreat this last summer, we had Cheryl Stinsky come in. That was a great service. I think we needed that opportunity to sit down and be able to talk and have a meal together and just communicate as a board. So those are a couple of them.
We went to the
convention.
Well, no, there was a new board member.
The regional.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, that was helpful.
Yeah.
The one in the fall?
Yeah, in Muskego.
Oh, that would be the new board member.
Yeah, in April.
Yeah, last spring, yeah.
Yes, so that's helpful.
And to your point before that, I think this is a little off, but when you guys talked about mentorship coming onto the board, perhaps a mentor could even be going with you to those meetings. I don't know if, Joe, did you attend the one this year? I thought you did.
he was there.
Okay.
I was not.
Just kind of tap into that mentorship. I think there's a couple of areas, and I'm not going to think of all of them, but two that come to mind is the budget. I think, how the budget works, the state funding formula, I always tell people that school districts are highly regulated. The state tells you how much you can spend overall and then how much you're going to get from the state. So you can't really deviate from that. If the state says your spending can increase to $30 million, that's what your maximum is. What they give to the district differs from that. So maybe the budget might be something that is more at a high level but more pertinent. And I think the other thing that we talked a little bit about during the survey was open meetings requests, or I'm sorry, open meeting regulations. So what does that look like? What does that mean? So I think that was those might be two things that are broader than specific to a specific district. It's broader, just kind of a broader understanding that might be helpful to new board members. And the other thing that I've thought of is, I've attended different WASB sessions on different things. What would be helpful sometimes is to almost have like a panel of 3-4 current board members who can then translate that and say, this is how we do things, or this is what it means to us in this school district. So, getting an overall professional development on a specific topic, but then getting the perspective or the viewpoint from a current board member who then can speak to, this is what it means to me, this is the lens that I see this issue coming up.
Anything else?
Yeah, I'll just add, I just think it helps to watch some school board meetings. So I don't know if you can put together some, just a variety of different school board meetings just to see just how boards operate from a school board standpoint. A lot of people think just because they went to school or they have people, students in school, that they understand the field of education, but education is very complex, and so I think it helps to just see how other boards operate from their board tables. So there's some lively ones, there's some, you can go anywhere from obviously MPS with a full parliamentarian at every board meeting, to probably something more relaxed, in rural areas of Wisconsin, and then obviously the suburban. I mean, most people who run for school board have attended school board meetings, but it just helps to watch. I think you can learn a lot by watching.
Maybe hit the highlights or something of.
Sure, like a commentary or just a best of. Could be a Netflix series.
Rob or Tasha, anything that you guys can think of?
No, well, I just have something with regards to the state convention this past week, because, Kathy was there too, but with regards to voting for the resolutions.
I knew that was going to come up.
Yeah, so we were never able to finish voting on them because we didn't have a quorum. People needed to leave. It was, I don't even know, 4 hours in. So I'm not sure if next year maybe move it up and, I don't know, have 2 hours, have them go to lunch and have them come back. So at least, we can get through all of the resolutions for the year. But I'm not sure we want this to happen again because
That is the first time I've seen that happen in a while, but I agree. I thought that moving it up to 12:30 would have been helpful. We just lost so many people at the end, and then those people that wrote those resolutions now have to wait another year before they go before the delegate assembly again. So the one, ours just
we'll
got
have
in.
those resolutions plus all the new ones.
Yeah.
So
Well, that was the only time that's ever happened.
Right.
And I understand that all the resolutions we did vote on were the ones submitted by our members. The ones that didn't were the ones submitted by the staff, but still, that went through the Policy and Res, which Kathy was on this year,
Mhm.
Policy and Resolutions Committee. And they spent a lot of time trying to craft something that they felt the membership could vote on fairly easily. And
We got a little-
amendments and discussion.
Oh, yeah.
Yes.
There are a lot of amendments.
And we've heard a lot of that, and we've discussed it a little bit. We had a board meeting right after that, a WSB board meeting, and discussing about how that went. I think, to be honest, it's been building for a while because over the past several years, it seems there are several people who think we're actually writing law.
Right.
When we're not.
Yeah.
We're providing positions for our lobbyists to go to.
And you did a nice job explaining that on the
Thanks.
on the.
A little late, though, unfortunately.
Well, I know, it was a little ways in. Or Rob, go ahead, please, because I know you were waiting.
I was just going to piggyback off of Mary, kind of with like watching board meetings, but I know it's tough because the elections end and then, we pretty much get started right away, but there could be some sort of like role-playing training or,
Mock, like a mock meeting.
Mock board
yeah,
meeting.
so you kind of at least have a little, trial by fire before you actually get up here. Or questionnaires sent out to just specifically new board members, maybe every quarter of their first year. Just kind of, there's budget season and then there's summer break. So it's pretty quick and pretty quiet during that time. So you don't really get a lot of experience from April to August through August, and then September kind of ramps up.
So quarterly, you mean when you say questionnaires, in terms of like?
I'm thinking quarterly, like business, but you could do it just from the time you start, like those first 3 months, and then a set of 3 months, like just 3 month blocks on your first year, kind of. Because different things are thrown at you, and obviously no one, at least I didn't have the experience with some of this stuff, so.
Yeah, unfortunately, I think most boards think the new person coming on should be quiet for a year, more or less, unless they have something significant.
I mean, I'm not going to lie, that's
but
kind of the role that
I was told that, I didn't listen.
That didn't stop me. I'm sure it didn't stop Kathy.
No, I mean, sometimes, being quiet and learning is a good thing, so.
Yeah. Yeah, I think most of us probably sit back and don't, unless we know for sure.
Right.
But yeah, it would be nice to maybe ramp that up a bit. I heard that at another board meeting that I had tonight.
Well, it's nice too because I'm not, this is Greendale. Like they can give me their opinions, but it's nice to hear from, like what other new board members are going through in their school districts. So
yeah, and that's a good idea because it could help us develop programming for new board members.
Right.
Maybe focus it more on what they really need rather than what we think.
Or even
George is a great guy, but I don't think he's ever been a board member. He was a superintendent.
Right.
I think that's a great idea, Rob, and I think the way technology has moved, it'd be very possible to have, once or twice a year webinar with new members that come together and, with the facilitator that talks about some of the issues and gives you an opportunity to ask questions and, in a setting with other new board members. I think that's a great idea.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of it's probably just spitballing, like, oh, hey, well, they brought up something, now I just thought of something,
Yeah.
or just more of a discussion type of forum instead of like, we're just going to give you these bullet points and, for an hour. So I think discussion, even in person, now that we're past COVID.
Yeah, social, some sort of social,
Yeah,
with
and
very good food.
Yeah.
I know that's how the new board member gatherings go. They basically, I talk, and then whoever from the WSB staff there kind of goes into detail, some do's and don'ts, which is good for the first session.
Right.
Because it's very easy to fall in some pitfalls. But yeah, going forward, that's a very good idea. More.
It's like drinking from a fire hose too when you're first getting started.
And I think we'll be getting more new board members in the near future.
Right.
Seems to be at that cycle where we're getting quite a few more new ones.
Right.
Let me ask you one question. Oh, I'm sorry, Kathy.
Well, I just had one thing that I would like to see the organization do on the national presence. I'm still not sure where we're going with that, but it does concern me that we need to have a collected effort at the national level. And right now we've got these two kind of opposing groups, because of the people that we pulled out of NSBA and now COSBA, I think it is. And I think you're going to that one this year, so it'll be interesting.
I did sign up for that.
Yeah, so I'm hoping we have a chance to hear how that one is or was, in comparison, but to really get us back to having that national presence, because as board members from the state, when we can come together with other board members from across the country, it really does. I know during the pandemic, it was a great opportunity when I went to the national convention to bring back, some thought process that went on, with other districts and what they were dealing with during that time.
I was going to ask, too, and that's a great thought, and I know we're going to have some more discussion at our February meeting. Where that goes exactly, I don't know, but...
Will the members get to also have input, or is it going to be a board-driven decision?
It'll be a board-driven decision, but I can definitely, say, hey, I talked to Greendale and Kathy, and they'll listen to Kathy. Yeah. Now, Kathy says we need a national presence.
Right.
And I think that'll carry some more weight to it.
I mean, it just feels different right now, right? For the years you've been on the board, I just feel like we kind of lost that a little bit over these last couple of years.
Yeah. 2020 was the last time we had any sort of real interaction with the NSBA, and that was their day at the Capitol in January.
Right.
So after that, it's just kind of been they've been mailing out their newsletters or magazines, updates, emails, things like that. So it really hasn't been as robust as it had in the past.
Right. So that would just be my 2 cents worth.
Yeah, that's great. One thing I got from the other board meeting that I attended tonight was they felt we needed more networking within our region with other boards. How do you feel about that?
I think that'd be great. Yeah, because we usually just have the fall regional meeting and then summer institute if people go.
And that's more statewide, which
that is statewide, yeah.
You have to go to, like, this year it was La Crosse, next year it's going to be Green Bay, or this year I should say is going to be.
And everything's up north because that's where all these
little
WASB people are. Who's in Region 11? Could you just rattle them off?
It's kind of tough. Basically, it's Waukesha and Milwaukee County, south of I-94, roughly.
Okay.
We are the smallest one in the state.
Oh,
size-wise, geographically.
Sure.
So that would even make it easier.
I should say we're the smallest besides Milwaukee. They don't count.
But no, I think wouldn't you guys like that opportunity to network with others?
Not quite as much as you, Kathy, but we would like it.
Yeah.
It is a good idea.
And unfortunately, we tie the networking in with other events. So we have a half hour of networking before the event, and then we have the hour or two of the event. And then it's just whoever sticks around to talk afterwards. So yes, I think that's.
I think that's great.
That's why I asked, because I'd like to get a little more oomph with.
Were you in Tosa tonight, or
Whitnall?
Whitnall. Okay, I knew you were in the area somewhere.
Yep.
Obviously.
Well, it's always nice to have Muskego here in Greendale.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you for coming.
It'd be nice to have Greendale and Muskego once.
And if we think of anything else, any one of us, we could email you and send those ideas on to you if that sounds all right to you.
Absolutely. I believe I emailed everyone on the board here, so you have my email address. If not, I'm sure Kathy can.
I can get it for you.
Or it's out on the website if you go to wasb.org.
Right.
So.
Awesome. Thanks for your time. I know it's been a long night for you too, so thanks for joining us tonight.
No, thank you very much, and I appreciate everyone's time.
Thank you.
Have a good
Take
one.
care, Brett.
Thanks.
Okay, now our order, we're going to go back to 5.1, which is the budget planning and 2023-24 budget assumptions. And I believe we're going to Jonathan for that.
Yes, Jonathan has shared the budget assumptions with you, and he's going to talk through a presentation to help you understand the scenarios that we are facing.
Thanks. So when we talk about the budget, we talk about how we're allocating resources to make a difference for kids. And so we utilize a 4-step model, and this should be familiar to board members from prior discussions that we've had. And we work through this 4-step process. So we very intentionally talk about needs identification first, and then move on to resource allocation. And so here you see within those steps, from the October, November, December time period, we've been involved in that first step, doing that needs identification. And really the focus here this evening is what does that revenue projection look like based on the information that we have now. We've shared this data from 2002 to 2020, U.S. Census Bureau data. Percentage of per student spending increase was 48th out of 50 states in the country. And as a result of that, Wisconsin has dropped from 11th to 25th in total per pupil spending. And that's prior to the current 21-23 biennium, where there was a freeze on per student spending. And so as we've talked about before, the state of Wisconsin is falling behind in its investment in kids. So as we prepare for the 23-24 budget cycle, we're keeping in mind the inflationary costs, and that's a big driver in the expense projections. So for the 22-23 year, there was bargaining. Wisconsin Employment Relations Commission sets the number based on CPI data, and that was set at 4.7. We've recently solidified what the number is going to be for 23-24 bargaining for next year, and that's at 8%. So almost double what we had this year. So beyond those wage costs, we also have our operational costs, whether it's utilities, food, fuel, supplies, curriculum materials. We also see it within our capital projects. And so those are all drivers in the expenditure allocations that we had in the background item provided to the board. When we look at the landscape, per pupil revenue caps that's lagged behind inflation by over $3,000 since 2009. So there were 3 scenarios we provided to the board in looking at revenue projections for the 23-24 year. One was an assumption of no new spendable revenues. So that would be similar to the current 21-23 biennium. So taking that forward, revenues would be $34,310,000 and expenses would be $36,808,882. So we talked earlier about those drivers and expenses and what the numbers are for negotiations. Well, we've plugged in on the salary side for expenses is 6%. And so we're looking at a total bargaining amount of 8%. So it's not at that maximum amount. All 3 of these scenarios we're using a 6% number. So just for that background piece. And so that would result in a deficit of $2,498,000 for the 23-24 budget. If the board recalls, when we did this process for the 22-23 year, we started at $980,000, and we had quite a bit of challenge getting to a balanced budget. So that's where we would start, but that assumes no new spendable revenues. Assumption 2, looking at $200 per pupil in the 23-24 year and an additional $250 in the 24-25 year. So one allocation being per student in some fashion, either categorical aid or revenue limit. So the first year would have 200 and then the second year would be 450 from the base. As well as this assumes an increase in the special education allocation to 35% in 23-24 and 40% in 24-25. So the current reimbursement rate is at 30%, and so this would assume a slight increase in each of the 2 years of the biennium. So for the 23-24 year, we would have revenues of $34,797,000, operating expenses of $36,543. You'll notice between scenario 1, the operational expenses are a little bit lower, and that would be a reflection of a higher reimbursement for special education. So the local operating fund would have to provide less for that as an expenditure to fund the special education fund.
What did you say scenario 1 was for special ed?
There's no change.
There was
Scenario
no change.
1, there was no change to special education.
Okay.
So this would result in a deficit of $1,745,809. And then for the scenario 3, looking at a revenue allocation of about $1,500. And so here we have operating revenues of $36,966,301 and expenses of $36,808,000, with an allocation of $1,500, with about $1,100 coming in year 1 and $400 coming in year 2. That would get us to a surplus, a small surplus within the budget.
How did we come up with this assumption? Are these just to get to a budget where it's greater than, or where we have a surplus?
Great question. Let me go to the breakdown of how we come up with this calculation. So in 1998, the state legislature provided a revenue calculation and said in each year the state budget will start with $200 per pupil and index that amount based on whatever the inflationary increase is. So it would start at 200 in 1998, and then each year add on an inflationary amount. So we as a district went back to that tool and played out each year, assuming that that continued on. It went from 1998 to 2009, and then that allocation, that formula was stopped at the state level. But assuming that that carried forward, by the 21-22 year, that would be about $342. And so the assumption is that you're carrying forward those annual increases. So you'd have about 340 in the first year of last biennium and 371 in the second year. The districts actually received $0 as an increase for those 2 years. And so in year 3, districts are behind that amount. And so there was some conversation at the state level that there were ESSER dollars at the time that were available, and districts can choose how to utilize those. We've had open conversations as a school district that those dollars have been utilized towards academic recovery and safety measures within our school district, so we did not utilize them for ongoing expenditures. For those that did use those for ongoing expenditures, they will expire and they're one-time funds. So this is reflecting that at some point, districts would need to be made whole for a biennium where there was not an increase. So then each amount is increasing by a CPI number. So you get to a projection of $392 and then $403 in 24-25. You're making some assumptions based on what inflationary numbers will be in March of 23 and March of 24, but your numbers are going to be relatively close. And the Legislative Fiscal Bureau has reviewed those to provide those estimated calculations. And so that would get to a revenue allocation of $1,510, which would be a biennium allocation including a makeup for the 21-23 biennium.
So that was a very clear explanation. And to summarize in a sentence, it's calculated based on the formula that was established by the state legislature in 1998 when they established revenue limits, and it is a compilation of the last 2 years plus the projected 2 years.
And when do we expect to hear more from the state? Is that in the legislative update or?
Great question. Yep, we've got a slide for that too. Great,
Oh.
Thank you for that question. So state budget dollars available. So obviously the revenue limit the state provides can be made up of both a state aid allocation, but it could also come via property taxes. If we just talk about the portion that's through state revenues that are available, the current biennium has a projected state surplus of $6.9 billion, which would be added to the state rainy day fund of $1.7 billion. So there's $8.6 billion that's available. And we anticipate we'll hear about new updated figures on how the biennium is expected to finish in June of 23 here in the near future. And these numbers could change slightly. But there's a record amount of dollars that are available between that rainy day fund and the state budget surplus. So for discussion with the board, 2 points. One is discussing public policy priorities for the 23-25 biennium and conversation about the allocation of $1,510 reflecting a CPI calculation that covers the past biennium where there was a per pupil increase freeze, as well as the 23-25 biennium. So looking for discussion of the board and that calculation and discussion of that with our legislators. 2, if a reasonable amount of spendable revenues does not come through the 23-25 biennium budget, the board should consider options for an operational referendum as soon as the 24-25 school year to sustain programming. In those first 2 scenarios that we showed you, we looked at deficits that were in the $1.7 million to $2.5 million range, and that's just for a 1-year time period. And so the board may be in a position, if there isn't a reasonable revenue allocation, to consider looking at the additional option that's available. And that would be the option the board would have, is a community ask. So question that Board Member Grogan had on the timeline. So here are timeline tasks. In September, Governor Evers and the state superintendent discussed priorities, and then the Department of Public Instruction came out with a budget request. In December, the governor started holding public listening sessions. January 24th, governor will deliver the State of the State address, and then next month on February 15th, we'll deliver a biennial budget message, and that will start a lot of the advocacy work around budget priorities. After that, the state legislature will have the Joint Finance Committee that will hold public hearings and discuss those budget priorities to work to put forward a budget to the governor, with the goal of that work being to settle that by the end of June when the current biennium expires. But that group will need to have negotiations with the governor and come to agreement on a budget to be passed. And so it's possible that that work could continue into the summer or later. So with that, again, our work is around resources that are going to make a difference for kids. And I'd be happy to answer any questions that the board would have at this time.
Okay, so what questions do we have? There's a lot of information there, some different scenarios that we're looking at. I do appreciate the work you put into this. I know it takes a lot to pre-plan for where we're going to be at in another year.
So it sounds like the 3 options before us is to hope that money comes through, operational budget, or cut, right? I mean, if we don't get the money from the state and we don't want to go to an operational budget referendum, then we would have to look into cutting. Correct? Yeah. I didn't see that third option up there, so I just thought I'd...
It is correct. One of the scenarios is to determine what goes.
Sure. And that would be $2 million worth of...
2.4, right?
2.5 million, and you would have to consider what it is. And that 2.5 can fluctuate depending on what the biennium approves. But you would have to look at people and programming to determine what services should no longer be offered to meet budget.
Mm-hmm. So let's all hope the state comes through, because I I don't know. I'm at this point in time, I can't see an operational referendum. I don't see referendum in this economy. We're about to hit a big recession, so I don't know how a referendum. I mean, obviously, we'd have more discussion if we had to over that, but
I think.
Oh, I was just. How long would it take to get the operational? I mean, it takes a while to
Right.
plant it, and you have to plant the seed. You have to sell it. You have to explain to the Greendale community that if it doesn't pass, then these are our options, and what we've decided would have to be cut, right? And maybe leave it up to the community to decide. But how long does it take to get the ball rolling on something like that?
There are only so many elections being held in a given year, and there is no fall election. So you would be looking at that. So it's not an option to go to operational referendum or any referendum for that matter when an election is not being held. So the next elections, there's an election in April, and obviously we won't know the scenarios from the state as to determine whether or not to even discuss that possibility. And then the next election after that is the spring of 2024.
Yeah.
So that would be the first possibility. And you would not want to take that lightly, and you would need some time to prepare if that is a consideration. And so you would want to weigh the options of making reductions to services or asking for taxpayers to contribute more.
I think one of the things that is important is to continue to advocate at the state level.
Mm-hmm.
So, I would encourage, the administration to continue to connect with our state legislatures, both in the legislature and the state senate. I know the WASB will be hosting the day at the Capitol. There'll be another opportunity to advocate. I think our legislators need to understand the predicament that schools are in. As I mentioned earlier, I feel that the school budget is a highly regulated budget, and the state tells you how much you can spend. And that's different from when the state tells you how much they are going to give you. So just because the state gives you $1 million more doesn't mean you can spend $1 million more. Those are two distinct questions. How much can you spend, and how much are they going to contribute to that spending? So I think we need to make sure that we continue to advocate at the state level what the impact would be. And I think I appreciate you sharing it with the district. I know it's early on, but I think we need to continue to have these conversations with the community so that they understand that there is a time where there will be a deficit, and that then means you have two options. One is to cut costs, or the second one is to
increase fees.
Yeah, you're not going to increase fees. Is to have an operational referendum. So.
And on that happy note.
So anything else on that? I know we just heard from from Brett Hyde too, that advocacy is one of the things that we could probably ask for more services to through our state association, so that because that one day at the Capitol is important, but I think we need more ongoing because we're going to need to really lobby our legislators to see that we have a need here. Not just in Greendale, but across the state. And they need to start, understanding that our schools can only function if they have the support necessary.
So we wanted to provide a range of options, since we do not have clear direction right now at the state level of what they're going to do in the budget for revenue allocation. We know that there's significant revenues available and what's projected in the fund balance. We don't have direction of what will actually happen. Right. And in the meantime, we need to start making decisions on programming for kids for next year. And so we want to provide that information as timely as possible. In terms of community conversations, we continue to connect through multiple means on our investments through the budget. We will be working with the citizen finance team next week and continuing this dialogue of what's presented here Dr. Midzik invited me to the Citizen Advisory Team to update on this information as well. So we do take advantage of those opportunities so that we're making sure that we're getting feedback on those priorities. We also want the board to understand what options are ahead and make sure that we're planning to leave the board multiple options on how to deliver programming for our students.
Thank you. Anyone else? On a somber note, that's tough. I appreciate the way you lay this out for us to understand and give us a pretty much a clear picture of what our choices are going to be and the direction that we maybe are going to have to go. So I do appreciate that. So we're good on that at this time. Thank you.
On to 5.2.
We're on to 5.2, which is the clerk's election candidate report.
That's you. I was going to say, do you want me to speak?
Oh, I'm sorry. I guess our clerk Rapito, I should probably ask you to.
No, that's okay.
Yes.
So we are coming upon spring elections, and we have 2 Greendale citizens who have filed their declaration of candidacy for the spring general election that will be held on April 4th. This will be for a term that has one winner for a regular 3-year seat to be filled with 2 candidates. We will not have a primary election, and the community members who have declared their candidacy will be listed in ballot order for the spring election. First will be Elise Siskey, and second will be Kathleen Weed Vincent. And I wish both, I encourage both to do well. And I think it's always encouraging when people want to serve on their school board.
Thank you. All right, we are on to 5.5, our legislative update. Board Member Hughes, anything to share there?
Well, not too much. Jonathan hit upon just the couple points that I had made. There's the Legislative Fiscal Bureau shows the revenue limit adjustments. If they are made for like the automatic inflationary increases tied to the CPI indexing, then it's what he had put up on the board for 23-24. We would expect $393, and for 24-25 school year it'd be $403. And also that Governor Evers has announced more listening sessions in regards to state budgeting. So, I mean, I guess all we can do as citizens is to email our people at the state level and encourage more funding for our schools.
And when did they say the listening sessions are March? Is that what I said? Oh, I'm sorry.
So you're speaking to the governor's listening sessions, correct?
Mm-hmm.
Do you have info on dates on those?
And don't worry if you don't right now.
So we can pull that information, but then I think to the second question is when will the joint finance have dates, and that will be announced later. But that would be expected in the March timeframe.
Okay. So board members will maybe have an opportunity to go speak, and I've been to those before. They're very long days. You got to get there early, but how well they listen, that's a whole nother thing. I mean, you can sit there and you wonder if they're taking it in or if they're just doing it as a formality sometimes. So did you have anything else with the legislative update? Okay. All right. Now we've got our 5.6, which is our board committee updates. So any board members want to talk about their committees?
No, just briefly remind people that the policy committee is still working with Neola and the transition. But other than that, that's all we have.
Okay. Anything else, Park and Rec?
I don't have anything on Park and Rec.
Oh, you're Park and Rec. Okay. And SWSA, I don't think, do you have anything from SWSA?
Yes, SWSA, the team discussed what was in the budget presentation this evening, talked about the estimate of $1,510 in spendable revenues over the biennium, encouraged member districts to consider that, had open dialogue about it, and discuss the fact that that's mathematical in nature. So that would be easier for having conversation with local elected representatives. It reflects a model that was created by the legislature to engage in conversations about how the state's going to choose to allocate resources in the biennium.
Okay, thank you, Jonathan. All right, next is 5.7, our board calendar review. Dr. Midzik.
So between now and the next board meeting, there are a couple of opportunities. I did not bring that up. We have the Citizen Advisory Team meeting on Thursday of this week. There is a superintendent's coffee. Is that February or March? Oh, sorry. I got ahead of myself. It's the same day of the week in February and March. And I think that's it. There's not a lot going on in the next couple of weeks.
And where is your coffee going to be and when?
March.
Oh, you said Dia Noche. Okay.
Yeah, Cafe Dia.
And I heard the last one was pretty well attended, so that's great.
Indeed.
Awesome. All right, we are at the end of our meeting. We have an additional comments and questions from visitors. Anybody here to speak tonight? No? Okay, won't put any pressure on. We are scheduled to meet again on February 6th at 7 p.m. And until then, I hope everyone has a safe and maybe snow-free winter that we're having, right? Thank you, everyone.